Hello there, math magicians. Here we are with another lesson, a new thing to learn in our algebra class. And while we learn this, you might want to jot down some notes and practice the problems along with me. Alright, if I go too fast, remember you can pause the video or you can replay any part that you need to hear again and just try to make sure you're thinking along. Alright, this is lesson 9.2 and we're solving quadratic equations still. But we're going to be using square roots. Alright, so yesterday we solved quadratic equations, and we did so by graphing. And when we were graphing, we were looking for the x-intercepts. And so this is a second method. You can only use this method on certain quadratic equations. You can use this method when you have binomials, or when you have a trinomial square. Alright, so this method is going to work if you have binomials, it will also work if you have a special trinomial called a trinomial square. Alright, so you can't use this method every time. Basically, we're going to be learning multiple ways to solve quadratic equations. Earlier in Unit 8, we learned how to factor. That's one method. Then yesterday we learned how to solve by graphing. And now we're using this square roots method. Alright, I think we're going to end up learning about 4 methods altogether. Alright, so here we go. This first problem, 3x squared minus 27 equals 0. We could use the factoring method on this. We could set it equal to 0, and it is already. Set it equal to 0, and factor. So I'm just going to show you that. So you factor out a 3, which is the GCF. You're left with x squared minus 9, because 3 times 9 is 27. And then x squared minus 9 would be the difference of perfect squares. So you could continue factoring so that you factor completely. And that will be x plus 3 times the quantity x minus 3. Hopefully you remember all this factoring from Unit 8. And then the zero product property, when you have different terms multiplied to give you 0, when you have a product that's 0, then one of the factors has to equal 0. So x would either equal negative 3 or x could equal 3. Okay, so that is a fine method. That's a great method. That's actually the factoring method. So we've learned that before. But today we're actually learning a new one. It's using square roots. So I'm going to do the same problem, and I'm going to use the new method. And actually I noticed that some of you have used this method actually on your test. And it's fine, it works. Now remember, this new method will work if you have binomials or if you have a trinomial square. So this is a binomial because it has 2 terms. And here we go. You're going to isolate the x squared. So you're going to add 27 to both sides, and that would give you 3x squared equals 27. And then you'll divide both sides by 3, and that will give you x squared equals 9. So you're solving, you're just isolating the x squared, and now you're going to take the square root of both sides. Okay, the square root of x squared is x, because x times x gives you x squared. And the square root of 9 is actually, it could either be 3 or negative 3, and sometimes we write that as plus or minus 3. And so see, you get the same 2 solutions. X equals plus or minus 3, positive or negative 3, and that's what we also discovered using the factoring method. Positive 3, negative 3. Here we're getting positive 3, negative 3. Now, this method some kids think is easier. The danger in this method is many kids forget that it could be positive or negative. Because remember, a positive 3 times a positive 3 will give you 9. But a negative 3 times a negative 3 will also give you positive 9, right? A positive times a positive is a positive, and a negative times a negative. So this is just a weird way of writing the same thing we have over here. So this is the new method called the square root method. Alright? Alright, let's try it on some of these other problems. So let's go maybe a little faster. Let's look at problem letter B. Okay, so this is this is a binomial here. So we can isolate the x squared, get the x squared alone. So you're going to add 10 to both sides. And when you add 10 to both sides, you'll get x squared equals 0. And now once you have the x squared isolated, you have x squared alone, you'll take the square root of both sides. And the square root of x squared is x. And the square root of 0 is 0. So this one only has one solution. This one over here had two solutions, positive and negative 3. And this one has one solution. Alright, let's try the next one. Okay, this one here has a binomial. In other words, it doesn't have just a plain old x. It has an x squared and then constants. Alright, so it has an x squared, no just plain x. You can use this new method. Alright, let's isolate the x squared. So to get rid of that positive 11, you'll subtract 11 from both sides. Leaves you with negative 5x squared. 16 take away 11, isn't that 5? And now you'll need to divide both sides by negative 5. Divide both sides by negative 5. X squared would equal negative 1. Okay, now you take the square root because you have the x squared isolated. So to undo that, you'll take the square root. And let's see here. Can you take a square root of a negative number? No, you can't, because like some kids might think that the answer, this is what some kids might think, could be positive or negative 1. But that doesn't work, because positive 1 times positive 1 is positive 1, and negative 1 multiplied by itself, negative 1 times negative 1 is positive. So this would be no solution. Okay, so this one would be, this is nope, 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 nope. This is no solution. So just like you learned yesterday, you sometimes get one solution, two solutions, or no solution. All right, let's continue. Okay, letter D, it has an x squared and just a constant. So let's isolate the x squared. Let's divide both sides by negative 3. When you divide both sides by negative 3, you'll get, let's see here, negative 75 divided by negative 3. I think that's positive 25. So now, since the squared is isolated, you can take the square root of both sides. And square root of x squared is x. And the square root of 25, remember, could be either positive 5 or negative 5. Okay, so you get two solutions. X either equals positive 5 or negative 5. And you write that, you just write plus or minus 5. Positive 5 times itself, positive 5 times positive 5 is 25. Negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. All right, we'll continue the other problems in the next video.